Sound check. Hello. 1, 2, 3. Are we? This microphone's off. The mic, yeah. That's yeah.
Was it not working for you a second ago?
No, I guess it was something.
So this is a test, 1, 2. Isn't that funny? Yeah, isn't that weird? Yes. Do you want to do that as well?
Hello. Yes. Yes.
Sorry, may I just do that? Yeah, you're fine. Isn't it odd? No, it's back.
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. I'm Martin Warnes, Chair of the Planning Committee, and I will be chairing the meeting tonight. To begin the meeting, there are a few matters of housekeeping. Action in the event of an emergency. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the Town Hall by going down the main staircase to the back staircase to the High Street and then to the car park behind the Town Hall in St Runwald Street. This meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube page and will be available after the meeting. Please would speakers use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone, and would participants mute the microphones when not speaking. Introductions. Members of the committee and officers will introduce themselves starting from my left.
Good evening. Good evening, Councillor Sam McCarthy representing Shrub End Ward and Vice Chair of the committee.
Good evening, Councillor Kayleigh Rippingale representing Newtown and Christchurch Ward.
Councillor Robert Davidson representing Mersey and Pyfleet Ward.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Dave Harris, Beerchurch Ward, substituting for Councillor Sam McLean, and thank you very much for allowing me to substitute. Thank you.
Lee Tate for Prettygate Ward.
Tracy Arnold, Stanway Ward.
Councillor Will Calverley, Tiptree Ward.
Councillor Catherine Spindler, Saints Ward.
Councillor Jackie McLean, Markstone Lair Ward.
Councillor Ken Machofolo for Castle Ward, also substituting for Councillor Gaucher.
Simon Cairns, Head of Planning.
Chris Harden, Planning Officer.
Nadine Calder, Planning Officer.
Lucy Mondon, Development Manager.
James Ryan, Development Manager.
Madeline Rolosma, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please, when using them discreetly, set them to silent and do not use voice or camera flash functions. If necessary, we will have a break at 7:30 p.m. and every 90 minutes thereafter. There are toilets on every floor in the building and an induction loop in this room. Whilst determination of a planning application is not a quasi-judicial process, like certain licensing functions carried out by the local authority, it is a formal administrative process involving the application of national and local policies, reference to legislation and case law, as well as rules of procedure, rights of appeal, and an expectation that people will act reasonably and fairly. All involved in these decisions should remember that the possibility that an aggrieved party may seek a judicial review or complain to the Ombudsman on grounds of maladministration or a breach of the authority's code. Item 2, substitutions, as you've been previously notified. Councillor Chuffalo for Councillor Gaucher and Councillor Harris for Councillor Sam McLean. Item 3, declaration of interest. Councillors must publicly announce the item number and whether the interest is disclosable pecuniary or any other registrable or non-registrable interest. I've noted that Councillor Chuffalo has told us he will recuse himself from items 7.2 and 7.3 to speak as ward councillor. Could he clarify on 7.4?
Yes, Chair. Back in April 2025, I did address the Planning Committee under an item linked to the Holy Trinity Church, and since September I have been supporting our officers with their community asset fund applications for Holy Trinity. Therefore, I would like to excuse myself from items 7.2, 7.3 and 7.4. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item 4, urgent items. There are no urgent items. Item 5, have your say. If anyone has a petition they wish to present to me on any of the items on the agenda this evening, please do so now. Okay, I don't see any. Item 6, minutes for confirmation. I'm inviting council to confirm that the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of November are a correct record. Thank you. I'll take them as being a correct record. So we move on to the planning applications, and I'm asked to read the applications and the speakers on the have your say list. So we have got 4 items, and we're going to take the last 2 items as one. So starting with 7.1, it's an application for land north of Coach Road, Great Hawksley, Colchester, outline planning permission, all matters reserved except for access for up to 150 dwellings. The recommendation is to approve, subject to a legal agreement and conditions. The presenting officer is Nadine Calder. There are no public speakers against, and the public speaker for is Stuart Wilshire, and the visiting councillor is Councillor Barber. Item 7.2 is St Boltoff's Priory Street, Colchester. It is a City Council development for public realm improvements. The recommendation is to approve with delegated authority in order to address matters of detail with Historic England. The presenting officer is Lucy Mondon. The public speaker against is John Burton. The public speaker for is Hugo Braddock, who is the architect and will speak via Zoom, and the visiting councillor is Councillor Chuffalo. Items 7.3 and 7.4, as previously stated, will be taken together. They are for the former Holy Trinity Church, Trinity Street, Colchester, and they are for repair and refurbishment of existing former church building previously used as a commercial space and storage. The recommendation is for approval, subject to consideration of any consultation comments following reconsultation process and delegated authority. The presenting officer is Chris Harden. The public member speaking against is John Burton. There is no public member speaking for, and the visiting councillor is Councillor Chuffalo. So, therefore, we have got speakers for all the items, so there will be no items en bloc this evening. So we will move on to item 7.1, land north of Coach Road, Great Hawksley, Colchester, and I will invite Nadine Calder to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This is an application in outline form with all matters reserved except for access, for up to 150 dwellings, which will include 30% of affordable housing, a car park, public open space, landscaping, a children's play area, and associated infrastructure. This slide shows the location plan with the site outlined in red. It is located to the north of Coach Road and to the west and north of the existing settlement of Great Hawksley. The only matter that is in detail submitted as part of this application is the access into the site, which is off Coach Road in the southeastern corner of the site. The top image shows you the access, and the bottom image shows you, no, sorry, the bottom one shows you the access, and the top one shows the where they propose a pedestrian link further to the southwestern corner of the site. That might be a bit more clearer now. So this image shows roughly where the access will be. There's an existing public right-of-way in this corner of the site that runs along the eastern boundary of the site, and the access will be proposed roughly in this area here. These two images show you the southern boundary of the site, with the top left corner looking east and the bottom right corner looking west along Coach Road. These photos show the site from the western boundary, so we're still on Coach Road, but now we're looking towards the east of the site. These are photos showing the actual application site, with the top left photo showing where a footpath is proposed within the site along Coach Road, and the bottom right shows the application site, and in the distance you can see the belt of trees, which you can see better here in the top left. The central tree belt is the tree belt that is discussed within the report in the landscape section, and then another photo showing the eastern parcel of the site. And these photos are taken from the footpath that I showed you in the first photo, the one that this is outside the application site, showing the relationship to the existing settlement to the east. This plan has been submitted as part of the application. It is a framework plan, which is illustrative only. It shows how the development could be, the different land uses could be provided on the site. But as you can see from the report, we are not suggesting that this parameter plan is adopted or included in any conditions, so that if and when a reserved matters application were to come forward, no parcel of the land is prejudiced and can be just looked at in detail with all the different elements as part of a detailed design. Now, the application also suggests highway improvements within the area, because there is a lot of congestion along Coach Road. So these, the conditions associated with the application would secure improvement along Coach Road along the lines shown here. So we have got improved uncontrolled crossings outside the school. We have got better sight lines for pedestrians and cyclists. There is going to be a dropped curb so that cyclists can join the highway where there currently is none. There's going to be a shared foot and cycleway along Keyless Road. And what is also proposed is a contribution towards works that the Highway Authority can carry out to see whether it is feasible to put forward a Zone 20 along all the green roads in that area, and red lines along Coach Road, which means no stopping at any time, and that will be restricted to school timings. So that would hopefully improve congestion along Coach Road along the times of pick-up and drop-off associated with the school. But this here is only indicative, because that has to be feasible, and that is going to be worked out in conjunction with the Highway Authority. So going back to the location plan, as set out earlier, this application is for up to 150 dwellings. The report explains the Council's position in terms of a high 5-year housing land supply, which we do have at the moment, but so the tilted balance is not engaged. But looking into the future, in February 2026, when the Section 1 local plan will go out of date, there is going to be a challenge to meet the 5-year housing land supply, and therefore any conflict with the spatial strategy will need to be given less weight, and the boosting the housing supply will have more weight. So any potential harm that is identified as part of housing schemes has to be significantly and demonstrably outweighed by the benefits. The report has identified the benefits, which includes boosting the housing supply. There also have been no statutory objections with this application. The only objections that have been received were from Place Services Landscape, which is in relation to that removal of that central tree belt. But as the report has identified, reinstating an original hedgerow is considered to be more beneficial than keeping a tree belt. And the other objection was from Anglian Water, but Anglian Water have a legal duty to provide a connection, and therefore we have suggested a condition which would overcome that issue, because the developer could not build anything above slab level before they provide evidence that there will be connections to the recycling centre. And so the only harm that carries any weight is the site lying outside the settlement limits, but that carries limited weight if we look into the future, so we have to take a pragmatic approach when it comes to that, and the loss of agricultural land. And as identified in the report, officers are of the opinion that the benefits outweigh the harm, and as such, the application is recommended for approval. Now, since writing the report, there have been 5 more objections received, which have not raised anything that hasn't already been reported in the report, except 2 comments where it was stated that 2 paragraphs in the local plan have not been considered, and these paragraphs relate to the preamble of the policy that relates to Great Hawksley. And I'm just going to summarise them quickly. So paragraph 6.167 talks about coalescence. And if we look at, so the paragraph states that it is important to seek to prevent coalescence between the southern edge of Great Hawksley and the northern edge of Colchester in order to retain the individual identity of the village. This is an extract from the council's policies maps, with this area in black representing Great Hawksley and this circular area being Colchester. The site is located here. So it is to the northwest, northwest of the existing settlement, and that would not result in coalescence. And the second paragraph is paragraph 6.168, which talks about infrastructure in the village is at capacity and will need to be improved, enhanced to support any new development. And as stated before, infrastructure includes Anglian Water, for example, which can be addressed via condition. It also includes road infrastructure, and this application includes improvements to Coach Road for cyclists and pedestrians. It also secures a foot and cycle link along the A134 if that link doesn't come forward as part of a previous approval, which is already in the process of being built, I believe. So if that for some reason was not going to be provided as part of that scheme, then this scheme would provide that link to Festival. So again, officers are of the view that whilst that was not specifically written in the report, those paragraphs have been satisfactorily addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll now invite Stuart Wiltshire to come and speak in support of the application. Once you press the red button, you have 3 minutes and a bell will go off after 2. Thank you.
There you go. Members, many thanks for allowing me the opportunity to address you this evening in respect to our application for up to 150 dwellings. I'd like to stress from the outset that 30% of these, in line with policy, will be affordable dwellings. As a local resident of Colchester myself, I'm well aware of the housing need in the area, and I'm therefore very pleased to bring this site forward to help address that need. It's useful to highlight that our site is identified by your planning officers as an allocation within your emerging local plan, forming part of a wider site for potentially up to 400 dwellings. Your committee report identifies the various evidence base carried out by officers, which has concluded that our site forms a logical extension to Great Hawksley. Paragraph 16.8 of the report is therefore very relevant to consideration of our application. Alongside the housing, our scheme will be bringing forward a small car parking area for use by the local school, alleviating car parking pressures during school drop-off and collection times, which has been supported by the local school, along with those other off-site highway measures which will be agreed within the Section 106 agreement. Whilst I recognise that our application has been brought forward in advance of the emerging plan, we've enjoyed working so proactively with your officers to bring the site forward in order to help boost the supply of housing in Colchester, which is recognised by your officers within the committee report and which is obviously a key desire nationally. This is reflected in the planning balance and conclusions section, which confirms that a pragmatic approach to applications such as ours should be taken in order to boost that housing supply. This section further goes on to confirm that the development has not attracted any objections from statutory consultees other than landscape, which has been dealt with, and Anglian Water. We are engaged in discussions with Anglian Water to deal with their concerns through either a planning condition or Section 106 requirement. Indeed, we look forward to ongoing dialogue between our solicitors and yours to ensure that the Section 106 agreement is signed and agreed as quickly as possible following this evening. The report identifies that the development will not cause harm to the amenity of nearby residents and will not have a severe impact on the highway network, concluding at 17.12 that the benefits of the scheme convincingly outweigh any policy conflicts. Accordingly, I hope that members will endorse your officer's recommendation and approve our application. Finally, just want to confirm that the application is an outline application with detail to be determined through subsequent reserved matters applications. I look forward to engaging with officers and the wider community in 2026 on the detail of the development, including layout and appearance, and we have already held many useful discussions with the Parish Council and the local school and look forward to bringing the site forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So can I now invite Councillor Barber, the visiting speaker. Lewis, you'll know the rules, and you have 5 minutes once you press the button, and the bell will go off after 4.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to focus my comments really on one particular aspect of this application, and that being the simple fact is that it's outside of the current local plan. And in our recent local plan committee and in the report itself, it specifies that at this stage of the emerging local plan, weight is not given to the emerging sites. So I think that's an important starting point. I take the comment about maybe a difference in position in February 2026. However, it is November 2025, and therefore I feel that we should be governing it on our current policies, and if there's a change in circumstances come February 2026, the committee can obviously reconsider any subsequent application that comes in at that point, or obviously if it's appealed, that'll be determined after that appeal. But if that was the stance we were going to take, we'd be permanently speculating on the future. We should be using our current policies, and the current policy is that it's outside of our current local plan, and our emerging local plan does not yet have weight. This would be a classic example of overdevelopment by this borough. We are given a very high government target, and I don't envy officers for having to try and deal with that, but we are not helping ourselves if we pass applications such as this. We are being told we currently have a 5-year supply. It is not in our current local plan, so why would we approve sites we don't need to? This is currently a speculative application. We are told that we have plan-led development to avoid speculative application. It would be completely deficient of logic if we then start approving developments that are not yet in our adopted local plan or a plan that is in a stage in its emerging process where it doesn't carry significant weight or in fact any weight at all. There are a number of site-specific issues I could draw on, but I don't feel that they carry as much weight as the argument around the emerging local plan issue. Obviously, Highways have made their comments, and I have to say, in fairness to the developer, they have worked with the local parish council. Myself, they've been offering to listen to feedback on some of the conditions, and that is welcome to hear the community's views on that. But it does not change the fundamental position that this is outside of our current local plan. Our emerging local plan does not yet have weight, and there may be a change in February 2026, but it is not February 2026 as yet. So I do, and obviously Regulation 18 committee consultation, which we're currently going into, may lead to changes in those sites anyway. That's what we're told is the whole point of the consultation, that is to invite feedback and may lead to change. So it may be that this site is not carried forward anyway in the emerging local plan. So I would urge you not to give too much weight or any weight at all to that consideration quite yet. Maybe if it came forward at February 2026, you'd have to take a different view, but we're not there yet. We should be using our existing policies, our existing plan. Otherwise, what is the point of the plan-led development that we're consistently told is important to avoid speculative applications if you go and approve a speculative application anyway? I don't really have any further comments on it at this current time. I would just draw on the water issue. Although I appreciate it can be dealt with at a conditions stage, it continues to be a troubling situation where we are approving developments where there is a significant capacity issue on our sewage and water network. We should not be taking that risk and assume that utility providers will just sort it, because we're seeing elsewhere that doesn't happen, and it causes problems not just for the sewage itself but our build-out rate on sites, because it acts as a constraint and we do not deliver housing. So I don't feel we should be approving developments without those issues addressed from the outset. I don't think we should be dealing with them as conditions. We should be making sure the infrastructure is in first and not resting on the hope that utility companies just catch up. And that is causing us problems on deliverability, as well as the simple fact it's not good for residents if our infrastructure is that strained. But I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. So I'll ask Nadine to pick up on the comments made by Mr Wiltshire and Councillor Barber.
Thank you. I agree. It is an application. The emerging local plan does not carry any weight, but the application has been assessed against current policies. And whilst it's outside of the development boundary, as you can read from the report, having assessed it against current local plan policies, the only policy conflict is it being outside the settlement boundary, and that which causes harm, that harm has to be balanced against the benefits of the scheme. And without looking at the emerging allocation, it has been found that this site could lend itself for residential development. So the report does go into some detail as to what the emerging policy says, but it doesn't rely on it at all. This is assessed against the current local plan. And whilst it is November 2025, this application were to be refused, an appeal would likely take place after February 2026. And at that point, it would be assessed against the housing land supply position at that stage. So we do need to at least consider the position that we are in at that time. As I've said before, Anglian Water, it's a problem that has been. They started objecting on a blanket level on all residential applications, and that should not hold up development because it can be addressed with a condition. So we would not allow them to build out their scheme without evidence that there is capacity. That capacity could be on a phased delivery potentially. So they wouldn't have to wait for 150 necessarily. It could be coming in stages. And we have worked with Anglian Water and with the Environment Agency to find strategies to increase the capacity in the catchment. And it has worked well in other areas. I believe it has worked well in Langham. So it can work. and it is in the developer's interest to find this capacity in working together with us and them, because they will not be able to build out their scheme. So they could keep the scheme alive, but they couldn't build out anything without that capacity. So there will be no impact on the environment, because there physically will not be any additional flow, because there won't be any new residents before there is capacity. So that's why it can be dealt with via condition. And there's one more matter that I forgot to mention in my presentation. I do apologise. If members were to be minded to approve this application, it is subject to a Section 106 agreement, but what is not in the heads of terms is that we would ask, without prejudice, to secure land for access should further development come forward to the north of the site, which is an emerging allocation, because this site is part of an emerging allocation. Now, that does not mean that there will be development, but if we were to secure access to the adjoining site with no land in between, it would mean that there will be no ransom strip. And that way we could, if there was permission in the future, link the two sites together. So that would be my recommendation, to add this into the Section 106. Thank you.
Thank you. So, members are now invited to speak. I have one notification, and before I call them, if anyone else wants to speak, if you can let my Vice Chair know. So I call Councillor Tate.
Thank you. I've got a couple of comments, although they do broadly echo those of Councillor Barber, and so I'm not going to repeat them. I do have concern about us assuming the outcome of the consultation of the local plan. So I'm very much on the side of following current policy. I also am not. I'm really not happy with the Anglian Water situation. They have said no, and I think if we think they're going to say no to everything and just do it anyway, that's certainly not a path I'd like to take. The main query I have is a comment from the parish council saying that the car park that's been offered has failed to take into account the recently approved development east of Nayland Road, and there was obviously a lot in the presentation, so I may have missed the resolution to that. So I'd like to understand what that resolution is, please.
Councillor Davidson. Sorry, apologies. Councillor Spindler, sorry.
Yes, just very quickly, 150 dwellings is on average around 200 to 400 people. The doctors' facilities able to take these sort of things, and the schools.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a couple of concerns, but I am very much aware of Nadine Calder's comments that actually, if this was refused, it would go to appeal after we've lost the 5-year supply, and that's not defendable, unfortunately, by this council. And we've had other sites, of course, come up before us in the last few months. Having said that, to me, it's a natural extension of the village. It's near the school. I'd like to make or recommend a couple of slight changes, in that the car park ought to be fully accessible and usable before any properties are occupied. And also, I'd happily accept that Nadine's suggestion that the northern access is added to the 106 as well. The only thing that does surprise me in 9.2, the last point of 9.2, it's asked, or the parish council is asking for the developer to take ownership of the land separating the site from Gala Close. At the moment, there's this wedge, which effectively will be isolated and unmanaged. So I think that would be a recommendation I'd like to put forward as well, that actually the the developer should take on responsibility for that stretch of land. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other speakers. So Nadine, if you could answer the points made by Councillor Tate, Spindler and Davidson.
Okay. First and foremost, this is not an assumption based on the emerging local plan. If the emerging local plan was at an advanced stage, we would give it more weight. We are giving it no weight. We are looking at the application based on its merits under the current local plan. And even under the current local plan, it is found to be acceptable. So this actually has nothing to do with the emerging local plan. The only matters that we have assessed is the emerging local plan requires some mitigation in terms of they're asking for a master plan, a contribution to the village hall. So we have looked at what the requirements are, and we can see that they have been taken into account. But this application is based on the current local plan only. The car park is providing space for some 30 cars. I am not 100% sure what this really has to do with Nayland Road. I think they probably may be within walking distance to that site, so I don't know whether they'll be interested in driving there. But also, if there was 150 dwellings in that area, there will be children living in those houses, and those children are most likely going to go to school at that school, which would mean those children could walk, and it might take some pressure off those families who might have to drive in. So I think a car park of 30 cars could be suitable for that site. In terms of doctors and schools, the development will have to mitigate its own impact, and there is a financial contribution towards the two nearest surgeries. So they will get a sum of money to improve their services or extend or relocate. So the NHS will look at what is best. But the two closest surgeries which have been named in the report, they will get a sum of money as part of this application. And Essex County Council have asked for a contribution as well. So that should be covered. And in terms of the request made by Councillor Davidson, I'm sure that that can be taken into the section 106, that the car park could be fully functional before any occupation. In terms of taking on ownership of that piece of land, at this point I don't know who owns that land, and there will be a risk of having to find out who owns this, and there could be, I don't know whether this is possible. And I have walked down that footpath and I've seen other people using it, so I don't think it will become an unmanaged area. And when it comes to reserved matters, we could make sure that houses are oriented in a way that overlook that footpath to make it more secure as well, potentially. So I would probably steer away from asking them to take that on unless there is an interest in them taking it on. But I believe that we can address that through the detailed design stage somehow.
Thank you. Councillor Davison, are you happy with the answer on the second point about the ownership of land?
I don't know who owns it either, but all I'd say is that obviously the parish council feel quite strongly about it, and it hadn't been addressed in the report, so I just wanted to tease it out. Hopefully the 106 is a contribution that they get from the development. You know, there's other ways of managing it once we know who controls it. That's really a parish council issue, I think. So yes, I am happy. Just as a observation, if we go for red lines along Coach Road, which is what the 2020 is proposing, that there are at least 30 cars parked there regularly at drop-off and pick-up. So actually the car park's barely big enough, but at least it should take people off the take the cars off the road. It's a very busy road, and I can't get tractors and trailers down it while it's parking like that.
Thank you, but you are content with Nadine agreeing to put a condition in that it has to be fully usable and accessible. Yeah.
And the access to the north, you were going to add that as well.
And you're happy to include that, Nadine?
Can I double check whether the car park has to be fully used before any occupation, or is there a percentage of occupations that you'd be happy with?
It depends when the red lines go down, but the other issue, of course, Chairman, is that developers' vehicles need to be off that road as well. Yes. And we've seen that in other developments, so I think that ought to be added. No, I'd be happy that the car park is usable before occupation, though. I think that's reasonable. It's only a hard surface. It shouldn't be hard to do.
Thank you. Yeah, okay then. And yes, just to reinforce the point about when the application site is being built out, the construction vehicles do need to be off of the road, as many of us have experienced problems in a number of sites where basically that doesn't happen, so we probably need to preempt it and make sure it does. So can I ask Councillor Davison that with the additional conditions that we've just discussed, are you happy to propose approval of this application? Is that a yes or a no?
Natural extension of the village, and the fact that we do have the risk of the appeal being overturned, and we'd have no chance to influence it after that.
Thank you, that seems reasonable. So Councillor Davison has proposed. Is there a seconder? Councillor Harris. Can I ask whether you would all show your hands? Those in favour, please show. Can't see any against. Any abstentions? Sorry, Councillor Tate against. Yep. Councillor Tate against.
Calverley and Spindler.
Sorry, Councillor Tate. Yep. And Councillor Calvi and Councillor Spindler against. Right. Any abstentions? So, Madeline, if you could tell us what that comes out at, please. So 3 against and 8 for. That application is passed. Thank you. We move on to item 7.2. And if I'm right in thinking, this is the point where Councillor Chuffalo recuses himself and goes and sits in the public area ready to speak. And therefore, we move on to 7.2, St Boltoff's, Priory Street, Colchester, and I invite Lucy Mondon to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just waiting for the presentation to share in full screen. There we are. Thank you for your patience. Thank you, Chair. Evening, members. This application seeks planning permission for public realm works, the creation of a new public square, erection of a play area, as well as footways and stepped and ramped access to provide additional connectivity and accessibility. But I'll be speaking you through the details of the proposal throughout the presentation. The application is referred to Planning Committee as the applicant is Colchester City Council. And the recommendation is to approve, subject to delegated authority for further discussions with Historic England on certain matters of detail, primarily related to impact on below-ground archaeology, and then delegated authority to address any of those matters and impose any requirements or conditions that Historic England may have. The application site is outlined here in red. The areas outlined in blue are land and property within the applicant's ownership. You'll see that there's a blue line going directly through the centre of the site, and that's because the application site is subject to different land ownership and responsibilities. So the interested parties are Colchester City Council, the diocese in relation to St Botolph's Church, and also English Heritage Trust. In terms of works in relation to the station, the interested party is Network Rail and Greater Anglia. But so that you can see the application site more clearly, I've highlighted it in red. You'll see that the lower portion of the site is the westernmost part of the existing Britannia car park, with the remainder of the car park outside of the application site to the east. The larger portion of the site in the centre covers St Botolph's Priory ruins and gardens, and then there's a piece of land to the north of Priory Street, which is immediately adjacent to and beneath the Roman town wall, which runs east-west alongside the north of Priory Street car park, which hopefully you can see on the plan. I'll just get... So in terms of other areas of locality, there is Colchester Town Station immediately to the south of the site, if you can see my cursor. There is residential properties to the east of the site with St Julian Grove and Priory Street. I've already mentioned Priory Street car park to the north. To the southwest is St Botolph's Roundabout, and to the west is a dense commercial area of St Botolph Street leading northward to Queen Street. So to give an idea of context, an aerial photograph, again I've shaded the site area in red. You can see the car park clearly indicated there, and also the landscaped area of the Priory Gardens, which has existing pathways throughout it, including some areas of desire lines, which I'll show you some photographs of in a moment. I thought this plan would be quite useful, seeing as the proposal is for public realm works. It's taken from the submitted design and access statement, but it identifies a number of other public and community buildings in the proximity of the site, so you could see how the public realm works would relate to other public and community uses, such as there's St Botolph's Church, of course, but also the Chinese Society, the mosque on Priory Street, just north of the site at buildings number 9 and 10, if you can see that on the screen, is the recently completed digital hub, and then there's some studio space. There's also further north the Natural History Museum and the First Sight Art Gallery as well. So this is a general slide that shows an overview of the proposals. It does fit into 3 different segments essentially, and when I talk through the presentation I will go from the south of the site and lead you up towards the north. So just to give an overview, the south of the site outlined here in orange, this covers the new public square and play area, as well as steps and ramp directly from the town station. It also has some car parking provision as well. The centre of the site, outlined in blue, is the Priory Gardens. There's a consolidation of pathways there, some more formalised gardens and enhancements to existing pathways. And then the northern part of the site, outlined in red, which covers the Priory steps and ramp over the Roman wall. Apologies, I didn't mention it in the committee papers, but it is useful to note that the Priory steps and ramp does benefit from a planning permission by virtue of an appeal decision in 2019. It was part of a much larger scheme north of the site, but the Priory steps and ramp were part of that scheme and were allowed under the appeal. The current scheme does differ from that approved scheme, and I'll provide you with some more details about how that differs a little bit later on in the presentation, but it's just a useful point to note in terms of planning history. Before I show you the details of the proposal, just some site photos. This is a Google Street View of Britannia car park, just as you enter into the car park. All along the southern boundary is the brick wall of the station, with the station platform being at a higher level to the car park. You can possibly see openings within the wall at ground level. These are openings into vaults underneath the station platform, and Colchester City Council has a lease of those. storage and plant areas, etc. To the left of the photograph is St Botolph's Church, and you can see the grassed area of part of Priory Gardens just next to the church as well, with the residential area beyond. Entrance into the gardens is through a gate from the car park, which is just next to the church. And photographs from when you just step through that gate is on the left-hand side here, facing the Priory ruins. Hopefully you can see that the site does undulate somewhat in terms of levels. The central photograph is showing a view over to the eastern boundary towards the residential properties, and there's also a gated access way on that boundary. And then the photograph on the right-hand side shows an image looking from that gate directly towards the church and the Priory ruins. The backdrop that you'll see is the rear of properties on St Botolph Street. Going back to the gated entrance from the car park, here you can clearly see the desire lines that have cut through the landscaping of the Priory Gardens, and then the photograph on the right hand side is a view looking east again, but with the ruins on your left and the church on your right. As you will have seen from the plans, there are existing pathways through the site that come along the western boundary around the left-hand side of the Priory ruins. There's a ramped pathway, and there are some stepped pathways as well. They do have a handrail on one side. There's also a stepped pathway to the north of the Priory ruins. And these lead up to a walled boundary with another gated entrance onto Priory Street. And this is the image of Priory Street with the gate that I mentioned on the right-hand side of the photograph. It's a one-way traffic road, so vehicles travel in the direction that you're looking in the photograph. And the area of land that would be for the Priory steps and ramp is this area where you can see the red bin in the photograph. You may also notice that despite the boundary being the Roman city or Roman town wall, there is quite a large element of modern brickwork, and I will show another photograph of that a little bit later on. But that's essentially due to later works where the former bus depot was built directly on top of the Roman wall. So this slide I thought would just be quite useful as an illustration, as a compare and contrast between what is on site at present and then what is proposed in terms of the square, the public square, the play area, steps coming from the station, and then the more formalised arrangement within the Priory Gardens. So looking at a little bit more detail, this is the proposals for the southern portion of the site. So there would be steps and a ramp coming directly from the station platform in this location. A reorientation slightly of the road through the site that would then lead to the retained Britannia car park, public square, and a play area to the north-eastern side of the site. There's also accessible parking spaces located in close proximity to the church, as well as 4 more accessible parking spaces retained just to the right-hand side beyond where the slide's showing, but I can show you another plan that indicates that. In terms of the play area, there's been very specific attention to detail in terms of designing it in a way that reflects the history and architecture of the site. I'll show you some of the play equipment in a moment, but just also to demonstrate that there is further history on this site other than the Priory ruins. In the 1960s, the entire site, including the majority of the Priory Gardens, was covered in very large factory buildings. So the play area does include, for example, some balance beams which reflect the foundations of some of those buildings, so it's reflecting of the history of the site throughout. This is some 3D imagery of the steps and ramp at the station, just to give you an impression of how that would look. You may note that the ramp itself is stepped away from the station wall, and that's indicated on this section drawing here that you can see the separation. That's to allow access by network rail and also access to those vaults underneath the platform that I mentioned. Some further imagery of the landscaping that would be proposed for that particular area. And of course, with the steps and ramp coming from the station platform, it would involve opening up a section of the station wall, and these images show how that would appear. So the central image is a photograph with the wall taken away, so you can clearly see what views would be afforded through there, and then the right hand image is a rendering to show how that would look with the proposal in place. You can see it opens up views to the church and to the Priory ruins, which wouldn't have been appreciated for many, many years. Some further imaging to show the central square area. It would be a multifunctional space, so potential for small-scale events and market, etc. And then the play area. The structures you see beneath the ground are showing the tree pits. And then when I was talking about some of the attention to detail in terms of design, for example, the slide and swing area in the centre of the play area reflects the archways that you can see in the Priory ruins. So moving into the Priory Gardens, as I mentioned, it's currently landscaped. The proposals would introduce some new pathways and then a formalisation of a garden area roughly in the centre of the site alongside St Botolph's Church to represent the cloister gardens from when the Priory was in use. There's additional landscaping in this area which I can show a little bit more detail in a moment. There's integrated street furniture as well in terms of integrated seating areas which also serve as discouraging desire lines through the Priory itself, which has caused some damage to the Priory structure. In terms of the existing pathways on the northern parcel of the site, where there are currently stepped access, these will be replaced and also provided with handrails so that they are standard compliant. And although it's not possible to completely regrade the existing ramped access way, there are going to be enhancements that would provide some resting and seating areas in this location and also some handrails which are not present at the moment. Where there is on Priory Street, where there would be a crossing, there's recommended a condition for further mitigation for pedestrians in that area. So that's recommended by the Highway Authority to have a scheme come in for any mitigation for pedestrians there. Although I would say that there is some built-in mitigation in any case because the access to the steps and ramps is set to the side, so there isn't a clear sight line from the gates across to the steps and ramps so that people would think that they would immediately exit the site and dash across the road. So just a landscaping scheme so that you can see some of the proposals a little clearer. There's additional tree planting proposed, formal planting areas. If you recall the photograph that I showed where there was the rear of properties on St Botolph Street, there is some tree planting proposed on the western boundary just to filter those views as well as some restorative work through the Priory itself because of those desire lines that have caused damage through there. And this is imagery of some of those works within the Priory Gardens. So as I mentioned, integrated street furniture such as the seating. A lot of attention to detail has been paid in terms of design and incorporating and reflecting elements of history and architectural features within the design in terms of patination and interpretation. So the top right-hand image does indicate a timeline, for example, that's included as part of the seating. The fencing that separates the square from Priory Gardens has the design of the archways that you see throughout the Priory as well. And that forms part of an overall scheme for interpretation boards, subtle interpretation and more overt interpretation, and also wayfinding signs as well. In terms of lighting, the dark blue areas on this plan show lighting within handrails. The southern part of the site would be lit with lighting columns, and then throughout Priory Gardens it is proposed for there to be low-level lighting bollards. This is one of the areas that Historic England need to look into in further detail. Essentially, they require further archaeological survey to fully appreciate and understand how the scheme would work in terms of causing minimal disruption to archaeology. I can also mention at this point that the other matter that Historic England are looking into further is some of the planting. For example, the tree planting on the eastern side of the site. Although tree pits are proposed, which is the appropriate method, it's just looking at the archaeology in more detail to consider tree planting positions, etc., because it is an important consideration. Finally, just looking at the priory steps and ramp. So this is the location for this part of the proposal, where I mentioned the later building on the wall. Hopefully this photo indicates it, that you have a lower level of the original Roman wall. There's an element of later rebuild, and then you have the later red brick element on top of that, and that's important to note because when you look at the layout plan here, the purple line on the plan indicates where that part of the wall will be taken down to enable the steps and ramp to go over the wall. Where I mentioned that there was a previous scheme that was allowed as part of the appeal, this scheme does differ to that proposal, and it does show some improvements to that proposal in my mind, not least because the gradient of the ramp can be achieved in standard compliance. So the approved scheme had a ramp at 1 in 12. I think they managed to lower it to 1 in 15. This current scheme is a 1 in 20 gradient, so it is compliant in that respect. And then just some imagery of that ramp and steps so you can see how it relates to the wall. And then looking in the other direction so you get an appreciation of the space and the gradients involved. And then finally some 3D imagery, including the top image, which shows the opening up of views across to St Botolph's Priory. So going back to the general overview slide, as I mentioned, the recommendation is for approval, subject to delegated authority to discuss further with Historic England in those specific matters, and then to take into account any requirements they may have, including any conditions that would be in addition to those that are recommended as part of the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you. So I now call upon John Burton to speak. When you press the red button, you'll have 3 minutes, and after 2 minutes, a bell will go off, giving you 1 further minute to speak.
Thank you, sir. The Civic Society is supportive of the improvements to the public realm between St Botolph's Church and the ancient Priory ruins. Provision of water bottle filling stations and facilities for the young are welcome along with the path improvements through the ancient Priory site. Unfortunately, the backdrop to the proposed path are the direct rears of St Botolph Street Conservation Area properties. The application anticipates welcome to Colchester will be negative by the exposure of the city's ugly side. Planning enforcement should accompany this project. We strongly oppose closing even part of Britannia Car Park. It serves so many activities day and night in the immediate vicinity. Lost parking revenue and reducing safe access to nearby shops and social activities is a serious concern. Many hate the alternative of multi-storey car parking, especially at night. The proposed crossing in Priory Street for pedestrians, we believe, needs to include improvements to the narrow pavements and the carriageway to the west. Wheelchairs and pushchairs use the highway. With increasing users there, this will be a dangerous area. Should this proposal go ahead, it will draw visitors away from St Botolph Street and possibly Queen Street and beyond in the core of the city. St Botolph Street and Queen Street, part of a conservation area, are crying out for improvements. The pavements are narrow, much street furniture is unwanted, the bus stops and casual parking cause congestion, planning controls are weak. Funding is needed there to improve the quality of the buildings and public realm in these streets. Approving this application is likely to result in further deterioration of the conservation area you are charged to maintain or enhance through reduced visitor numbers. Your officers are skilled at obtaining funds for projects around the city. The Society would prefer efforts are directed to the enhancing of the city's historic aspects to improve the attractiveness and viability of the city rather than close its car parks. We are not opposed to high-quality new buildings where it is required. Please refuse this application as presented and select the better aspects. Part removal of the station wall is key to the scheme. The application on the portal is not complete regarding serving notice on the owners of the wall. Is the wall listed as a curtilage building to the listed station master's house? Originally, the 1866 station owners' boardroom was connected with the station. We are not clear on this. Are you, as a planning committee? Can you approve the scheme with this unresolved? The other thing one wanted to ask as well, as I've got a few seconds, was that if we could have the plan of the Priory paved rather than grassed, I think people would appreciate the quality of the building, the scale of it as well. At the moment, it just looks like a grassed floor. Thank you, sir. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. I call upon Hugo Braddock to speak in support of the application via Zoom.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The St Botolph's project is a key part of the wider master plan for Colchester City Centre, that in time will act as the anchor for a new neighbourhood as surrounding sites come forward. It will have a major positive impact on Colchester, enhancing heritage assets, improving connectivity, and helping to tackle antisocial behaviour. The new station entrance, square, Priory steps, and improved crossing at Priory Street, which does include widening the pavements, will all improve pedestrian and cycle connectivity from the station to the city centre, including to First Sight and the castle beyond. They will improve safety and accessibility for all users, including those with limited mobility or with visual impairments. All new routes have been designed to be fully accessible to modern standards, and vehicle routes have been carefully tracked to be safe and usable. The scheme will deliver high-quality public realm, enhancing the experience of key heritage and cultural landmarks in the city, including a new civic square able to accommodate a market and events, new surfacing and signage, new planting and trees, seating, and a new play area with equipment for different age groups. All of these will help activate the area, providing reasons to dwell and opportunities for social interaction and community use, contributing to the town centre's safety, character, and cultural vibrancy. The new spaces will improve biodiversity, replacing hard standing with new planting, trees and swales, and incorporating input from designers Beth Chat. These will all support climate change adaptation, sustainable urban drainage, and urban greening. The project will deliver economic benefits and social value for Colchester. It will support local economic activity through construction investment and the delivery of capital works, and it will enhance the setting of adjacent commercial uses and institutions, and encourage visitor footfall around the area and within the city centre. The project team have engaged throughout the project with a range of stakeholders, and we have worked hard to respond to any concerns raised along the way. The proposed scheme will see the removal of approximately one-third of the existing parking bays at the Britannia car park. Statistics produced by the recent citywide parking strategy showed an oversupply of parking bays across the council's car park portfolio, with the lost capacity at Britannia expected to be absorbed by people using alternative car parks such as Priory Street, St Mary's and St John's. The current blue badge parking spaces are retained and reconfigured to support visitors to the St Botolph's Church, Colchester Chinese Association and other nearby businesses. The design has been developed in close coordination with Colchester's heritage officers, Historic England and English Heritage, as well as the roundabout team and railway stakeholders. We've listened and made changes where appropriate to mitigate concerns around heritage assets and avoid risk of damage to the station wall, the Roman city wall, the Priory or its archaeology. These include moving the play area out of the garden, offsetting the new walkway from the station wall, and in the detailed designs of footings, planting and locations of routes. We're very excited about this project, and we look forward to helping turn it into a reality for Colchester over the months ahead. Thank you.
And can I ask Councillor Chapellow to speak? You have 5 minutes, and once you press the red button, bell will go after 4, giving you 1 further minute to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to begin my speech by thanking officers who are working on St. Botolph's Quarter landscape scheme. I want to especially thank Daniel and Matt, who proactively engaged with ward councillors and arranged additional briefings for the ward councillors, where they kindly answered all our questions and noted our views and recommendations. During these briefings, I had several concerns and questions around types of lights that we'll install, trees and flowers which will be planted, maintenance and security around children's playground, and also a recommendation that installing water points would be beneficial. Tonight I'm delighted to see some specific references to these points, including that we will be planting native trees and that there will be 2 water points and that all bollards will be specified to avoid glare or reflection. Considering the fact that introducing lights to areas and habitats which are usually dark may disturb wildlife of the area, we definitely need to find the right balance between ensuring safe access and visibility for pedestrians while minimizing and respecting the welfare of our wildlife. So moving to my 5 questions. My first question is in page 58 under section 14. It is noted that the site is outside of any air quality management area and will not generate significant impacts upon the zone. While one may guess that air quality of the area might slightly improve due to removing around 86 parking spaces, I noticed that up until last year, St. Botolph's area was indeed within the air quality management area. And considering the fact that Council is now intending to create a children's playground, I believe it would be beneficial if we could install an air pollution detector and monitor the area, as the playground will be sandwiched between a car park, train station, and one of Colchester's busiest roundabouts. Linked to this, I'd appreciate if officers could provide further information on recent changes on air quality management area, and if members could consider adding a condition to install gadgets to measure air quality in this area, and also make considerations around how to ensure security around playground, which will be next to a busy train station. My next question is, I believe inclusion and a reference to some sort of management and maintenance plan would be beneficial. I couldn't find a detailed plan on these points, and I did notice that some of the commenters also included similar inquiries and comments. Moving to my third question, I was unable to find a detailed map showing location of the 5 trees which will be removed and 66 new trees which will be planted. Therefore, could officers help us understand which 5 trees will be removed and why? And can we make sure that any trees which will be cut down will be repurposed in Colchester? We have a number of charities and community partners such as STEP CIC, Colchester, as well as institutions which offer trainings and classes on wood carving. So I believe we should honor any cut down trees by repurposing and recycling them here in Colchester. My fourth question is about Essex Wildlife Trust. I noticed that they did not submit any comments before we publicized our agenda, so I was wondering if we received any comments from them since we published the agenda. And finally, I couldn't notice any specific reference to tactile paving for people with visual impairments. Therefore, I would appreciate it if officers could respond to that point as well. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I invite Lucy to reply to the comments from John Burton, Hugo Braddock and Councillor Chapellow.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll try and go through these in order that they were referred to, so I don't miss anything. In terms of civic society comments that referred to the rear of properties on St Botolph Street, yes, you can currently see a significant amount of the rear of those properties on St Botolph Street, and there's been a number of alterations to those properties over the years, certain enforcement matters as is referred to, long-standing changes along there. But what the scheme does do is propose some additional landscaping to filter those views, as I've mentioned. So that is an enhancement in essence, we can certainly look closer at whether there's any enforcement action that needs to be taken against any of those properties. But as I say, a lot of it is very historic works that has taken place over a long period of time, quite often with the benefit of much older planning permissions. In terms of the closure of Britannia Car Park, that was a subject that garnered quite a lot of interest in terms of public representation and objection to the scheme. What I would say is that Britannia Car Park is allocated for development as part of the adopted local plan. That was consulted upon and examined. It was also part of the previous local plan as well, so it's been consulted upon and examined and adopted twice for development. It's also part of the city centre master plan, so there's long-standing engagement and intention to develop the site. With regards to loss of car parking, I have made inquiries with our strategic parking team, and they have undertaken a considerable amount of modelling as part of their role, modelling in terms of car parking. For city centre car parks, certainly Colchester run car parks, the modelling has shown that there is a capacity of at least 500 to 800 spaces, so there is suitable capacity for car parking within the city centre. For Britannia Car Park, it very rarely runs to capacity. There are occasions where it will be full. That is generally in a few days before Christmas, or perhaps if there is a particular large-scale event in the city centre, although according to the modelling and data that I've been informed about, that's generally for no more than an hour in a day, and that's taking into account ticket sales rather than actual cars on the ground. If people have bought a ticket for 2 hours, we're not to know if they have left early, for example. So in terms of car parking capacity, there is sufficient capacity at Britannia Car Park as well as the city in general, and that demonstrates as well in terms of any loss of revenue for the loss of those parking spaces on the development area, that with capacity elsewhere there is not perceived to be a significant or perhaps maybe nominal loss of car parking revenue. For the multi-storey car parks that are available, there is a large project undergoing at the moment to improve St Mary's and St John's car parks, which widens spaces, improves the public areas as well. So that is ongoing to improve some of the alternative options in terms of multi-storey car parking. With the comments regarding the conservation area, yes, there are improvements that would be beneficial to the conservation area in general. We're obviously not considering proposals for those at the moment. We're considering the scheme in front of us. But it would be important to note that this scheme is funded under the Levelling Up programme. There are specific requirements for what that funding is to be spent on, and if it isn't spent, the money would be returned. This would be seen as a launch pad, if you like, for looking for future funding elsewhere rather than precluding that. So it would be a starting point, in effect, for looking for funding and improvements throughout the conservation area in the vicinity. I've considered elements of objection that refer to these works causing visitors to perhaps not venture through St Botolph Street. And a proposal would include wayfinding at that point, so to direct people to St Botolph Street. So they have options there which to travel into the city centre through to the north or to go through to St Botolph Street. And I can certainly include a condition for wayfinding signage in general. In terms of Colchester Town Station and the works to the station wall, negotiation has taken place with Network Rail and Greater Anglia throughout the pre-application process as well as throughout the course of the planning application, and Network Rail and Greater Anglia have responded to say they have no objections to the proposals. There are certain elements of process that would take place outside the planning system. They have some agreements that need to be put in place, etc., but that would be separate to planning. In terms of whether the station wall is curtilage listed, I have considered that in the committee report. The issue of curtilage listing can sometimes be quite complex. In very simple terms, you're considering whether the structure was present before 1948 and also present before the date of listing, whether it is ancillary to the primary listed building as well. So in this case, I've concluded in the report essentially that the town station buildings are not ancillary to the primary listed building, which is a station master's house essentially, rather that it is the other way around, that the station house would be ancillary to the main use of the station buildings. Nonetheless, the application has been considered in terms of impact on heritage, and as set out in the report, the breaking through of the station wall would of course have a physical and visual effect, but the benefits are such that it would improve the understanding and appreciation and significance of the priory structures in terms of its context with the city centre and public appreciation. I take on point the point that was raised about paving the area within the Priory. That has been discussed at quite some length with Historic England, so I can continue those discussions with Historic England about that element of the proposal and landscaping. The comments from the architect, just to reinforce, yes, there are significant benefits from the scheme in terms of safety and security. The increased footfall, negotiation and consultation has taken place with the police, and they have specifically referred to the increased footfall helping reduce antisocial behaviour. And finally, the comments from the councillor. So in terms of lighting and wildlife, yes, the lighting has been designed with impact on wildlife in mind. It would need to be wildlife sensitive lighting. In terms of air quality, yes, I mean, there would be a reduction in traffic, certainly because of part of the car park being developed, but I appreciate that there could be visitors to the area. I would say also there are improvements, obviously, with the access directly from the station, encouraging train use, and there is also cycle parking proposed at the scheme that would encourage that as well. I could explore options for an air pollution detector if that was considered appropriate by members, so I can take that on board and take that away as part of the delegated authority. With landscape management, I understand that, well, obviously at the moment these areas are managed. There are elements of management that need to take place regularly. For example, at the Priory Gardens, the area is mown 8 times a year. The gates are closed at dusk and opened early in the morning as well. That would continue. In terms of any increased landscape management, the design of the proposal has taken that on board and has sought to limit elements of management with quite robust planting, drought-resistant planting, for example. The council is mindful of the landscape management needs and are exploring different options for that. Essentially, it's not really a purpose for the planning decision to query the future landscape management, other than we would secure that as part of a planning condition. With the trees that are to be removed, I can show a plan if that's useful. If I just go back to sharing my screen, I can indicate where those trees are. So 5 trees, where there is an existing group of trees on the boundary between the car park and the Priory Gardens, there are currently 5 trees in that location. 3 would be retained, 1 on either end would be removed. These are more than compensated for in terms of additional tree planting, and the canopy cover level is suitably increased as well. As set out in the report, these are category C trees of somewhat low quality, so that was considered acceptable by the arboricultural officer. The other 3 trees are within the area where the steps and ramps would be located. Again, low quality trees, but additional planting would be proposed as part of the scheme for the ramps and step. Essex Wildlife Trust, I do not have any comments from Essex Wildlife Trust. And in terms of tactile paving, there would certainly be appropriate tactile paving so that it meets British standards. I can make a particular point of that in the landscaping conditions so that we can ensure that specific details are provided as part of a condition for approval. I'm hoping that covers everything. Thank you.
Thank you. The only thing you didn't answer was whether the trees that are taken down, appreciate they're of low quality, whether they could be repurposed.
I think given the quality of the trees, it would be difficult to repurpose them. I think it's quite difficult to remove and relocate trees in any case, but given the quality of these trees, I think it would be quite difficult to do that. That being said, they are compensated for in the planting scheme on the site in any case.
Thank you. So what I propose, members, is that we'll continue discussion on this item, and when that's concluded, we'll take a break and then come back and do the last 2. So I'll invite members to speak, and I've got Councillor Rippingale first, followed by Councillor Spindler.
Sorry about that. So I was really reflecting on the comments that have been flying around about the loss of the car park, and mine's more of an observation. As a woman, I've always felt really unsafe in that car park. It's dark, and it's a narrow road in, and there's not many exit points. From what I can see, this provides a lot more exit points for women, or anyone who feels at threat of attack in that area. I just had a look at the crime record for there, and it's actually a very high. So there was 1,267 crimes per 1,000 people in the St Botolph Street area in the past 12 months. And 120 of those were violent or sexual offence crimes. So for me, this is a vast improvement on the scheme, because the lighting, even just the additional lighting, will provide a much more safer environment for those parking in Britannia. I suppose my only question would be, has there been additional provision for, for lighting in Britannia past the public realm? Because again, that is not a well-lit area or a well-lit car park, and it's an issue in the city centre because of the history that we have, and the road layouts, we're limited. So from my perspective, this feels like a really well-designed scheme that actually will probably encourage more people to use the car park and use the travel links into the station because of the additional lighting and safety features, and just like you said, more people being around using the space. So one would hope that then we would actually see some of these crime levels come down as well, and an improvement in the quality of St Botolph's area and the street in terms of businesses. So, sorry, mine was more of a general observation about safety.
Thank you. Councillor Spindler, followed by Councillor Tate.
Hi. Councillor Kamal mentioned a few things that I was going to mention. I was concerned about the maintenance of the tree, but that's trees that once it's all been done. I didn't notice a crossing from the station to where the new area is, including the play area. So pedestrians coming from the station just randomly going to get across the road and hope that no cars are coming. Also, if I was travelling down from Mersey, I'd want to park my car in that car park and catch the train off to Clacton or wherever. That would be more convenient than crossing the town to North Station. So is there designated parking spaces that go with the railway? That would be a lot better. There was another thing, and I can't remember it now, so yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Tate, followed by Councillor Harris.
I'm less, as Councillor Whippingo, I'm less concerned by the loss of parking. Is there not the massive one next door, or is that closed down, the NCP? I mean, there is a big car park right next door. The safety concerns are really actually highlighted by the crime statistics. I do share the views of our friend from Colchester Civic Society, you know, with regard to the need maybe for some stronger enforcement, because there is a particularly ugly row of buildings along, mismatch along, and that is going to detract slightly from the overall ambience of the square. However, being a big lover of heritage is my main passion. For me, it's really welcome at this committee to actually see something that celebrates our heritage. We spend a lot of our time trying to limit, I don't want to say damage to it, but I've had a very long day and I can't think of a better word than damage to it. So to actually have a proposal that enhances it, celebrates it, and will open it up to more people is something that I'm very keen on, particularly the views across to the Priory. You've got something amazing there that we hide behind some ugly shops. So if we could open it up, I'm all in favour of that.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, followed by Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Yes, I found myself nodding along with Councillor Rivingdale about the remarks about the improvements, and some of the pictures I've seen, Chair, look very aesthetically pleasing, especially with heritage, as previous speakers have said, in mind. I finished off my railway career, and there's a railway wall on the southern boundary of this site. I finished off my railway career as a senior engineer, but I started off as a very lowly paid and a very low paid in mid-70s chap changing sleepers, rails, etc. on St Botolph's, as it was then. And in those days we were mandated to keep the path open in case of war, etc. This was obviously at that time, it was still fresh and more fresher in people's minds, to get the army onto trains before the days of electrification, with heavy and light artillery and heavy machine guns, tanks, etc., and on trains and out of there. And a lot of people in World War I went out of that, past that wall there. That's the last static thing they saw as they went out to war, and some of them never returned. So I'd like to think that some of that heritage could be interpreted within that timescale in that area somewhere. You're going to leave some of that wall behind. Obviously, I know you could cut through there to the Network Rail bit, and I'll say more about that later. But that would be brilliant to actually interpret that and to celebrate our links with the armed forces and about those lads, those young lads that didn't come back at that time. I maintained those sleepers in the early 70s, but I certainly didn't build it because it was a long time before I was there. But I remember that quite poignantly along the way. So something can be done about that as an informative. On to the bike situation. I know I'm hopping around a bit, but there's provision for 16 bikes, it says, within the paperwork. And I wonder whether there's any scope to increase that, to encourage cycling, and also to put in a virtual or even a marked bay for electric bikes. because for me, it would seem a sensible place to start and finish your journey if you were not using your car and coming into that area on an electric bike, park it up, leave it, and then on your way home from the town again, take another journey and come back off to Mersey or to my area, my estate or whatever. That would be quite useful. So all in all things considered, the parking, I understand, people have mentioned that, and the Civic Society, but we know the local plan is as it is, so that's where we are. So, Chair, I'm quite supportive of this, with the amendments that people are making. I'm quite supportive of this proposal, and I will be voting for it when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arnold, followed by Councillor Davidson.
Yeah, again, just sounding what other people have said before, I like the design, especially around the wheelchair access. It is incredibly hard to push a wheelchair around that area. I have done it for my husband. This will give access to a nicer way into the town. The gradient coming down is amazing. I agree with Councillor Spinder. Some marking to cross the road from the station, just so it makes it clear that people are crossing there. And also, I also like the idea of having some pavement within the Priory itself, not the grass, so wheelchair access can get inside and see see in all its glory. Because pushing wheelchairs on grass is not fun, trust me. Thank you.
And looks like finally Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it will be an enhanced area, and it celebrates our historic past. My concern is two or threefold, really. First of all, I noticed that the area of car parking that we're planning to put trees on is actually a scheduled ancient monument. So are there pits on all the trees in that area? Because obviously, you're going to have the same historic archaeological problems in there as well. I would support paving the underneath of the monastery, in that there's actually quite a few rather interesting tombs there, and actually having grass is fine in the summer, but people will want to wander around and have a look. And also, I'm very concerned about the trades in Queen Street, because at the moment it's a poor area, and I think we need waymarking to point them back into Queen Street from the front of the modern church, just so actually those businesses get some business, because there's a real danger. The roundabout's being completely changed, isn't it? And the pink area, of course, is finally going to be housing. So there will be no parking effectively left in the longer term, and those businesses will suffer. Yeah, those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll ask Lucy to address those. Just before we do that, I've got down that members are basically interested in you pursuing possible an air pollution detector in the area, and condition on wayfinding for the St Botolph's area, but also Queen Street, and a additional lighting for the provision of parts of the public area of Britannia, and heritage signing and an informative around the usage of the train station by First World War soldiers, and a marked bay for an electric bike charging point, and crossing markings where people would have to cross over the road going into the car park. Over to you.
So in terms of lighting of the wider car park, that wouldn't form part of the application site. However, it is a car park run by the City Council, so I can put that as an informative and discuss it with the appropriate people, so I can take that forward, although it would be slightly separate to this planning application. The crossing where the road comes into the car park, so within the square itself, that is proposed to have shared surface paving, so it does delineate that there's a pedestrian area there, so that is covered, but it would be covered in more detail as part of a condition that I've recommended for detailed landscape proposals. Designated spaces for users of the railway, I'm not sure whether, again, that's for the retained car park, which is outside the application site, but I'm not sure it'd be relevant for this particular proposal. I would suggest a condition that would cover wayfinding, including wayfinding to businesses on St Botolph Street and also Priory Street. That is something that has been suggested as part of the application, so we can secure that as part of a condition. Similarly, we can have a condition to secure details of the interpretation measures that they're putting in, and I can also include specific reference to interpretation boards in relation to the station and the war veterans or users of the station as well. That's been referred to in the application. In terms of cycle parking, I would also suggest a condition that would seek to secure a scheme for cycle parking for a minimum of 16 spaces, and therefore we can see what can be achieved there, and I can also refer to provision of EV charging. In terms of Councillor Davidson's comment about scheduled ancient monument, yes, the site is all a scheduled ancient monument. Of course, there's been detailed negotiation with Historic England throughout, and they've commented on all these elements of the proposal in terms of the impact on archaeology in particular. There would also be a requirement for scheduled monument consent separate to the planning system, so that would need to be applied for as well. But as part of the planning application, we've of course got detailed consultation with Historic England to cover those concerns. And we've mentioned about potential paving within the monastery. I would refer back to Historic England, but it's something that I can take back to them because I know it is something that has been discussed previously. So I think in summary, I'm kind of repeating what you've said, Chair, in terms of a note about air pollution detector, an additional condition relating to interpretation and wayfinding. That's including wayfinding to Queen Street and Priory Street, and a condition for a scheme for cycle parking for a minimum of 16 spaces, and then to include options for EV parking. And also I will take forward comments made about lighting to the remainder of the car park as well.
Thank you, Madeline. Can I ask whether you've got those down?
Note about the air pollution detector condition.
Okay. And paving. Are there any further questions? Can't see any. Okay. Is there a proposal to accept along with the various amendments that have been proposed? Proposed by Councillor Harris. Is there a seconder? Councillor McCarthy. All those in favour, please show. Okay. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Madeline, if you could tell us the result, please. Thank you. That application is passed. We'll now take a break for 10 minutes. If you could be back here at 5:02, and we will then continue the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to drop out now.
Okay, thank you members and welcome back to this meeting of the Planning Committee. We're going to resume our deliberations and we're taking 7.3 and 7.4, which are to do with the former Holy Trinity Church, Trinity Street, Colchester. We are taking those together. So I will invite I'll invite Chris Harding to present the report.
See that, Chairman? I'll just enlarge it a bit. Yep, good. Okay, so this is an application at the Holy Trinity Church in Colchester, which is a Grade 1 listed building, and also it's within the conservation area. So the application is for the repair and refurbishment of the former church building, and it would be used to create a community hub with historic interpretation experience. So I'll just take you through the presentation. So that is the site there. That's the former church in red with its associated churchyard. And that's a picture I took on my hang glider during the week, showing the context. So that's the main tower at the front there and the churchyard around. This is the current state of the front entrance, obviously scaffolding up to do work, and here's the historic entrance down here. And then here's a view around the churchyard. Obviously at this time of year, or when we took the photographs a couple of weeks ago, it was quite well screened, to be honest, and other views around. So I'll just take you through the floor plans now. You probably can't read this, but I have got some larger scale drawings which will hopefully make it a little clearer. So you've got the tower works here, you've got meeting spaces down here, if you can see my cursor. Then you've got toilets here, you've got the nave sort of open here, and then basically the usable altar at the end here, kitchen in here. Then there's a new fire door which I can show you, that's just down here if you can see my cursor. I have got larger scale drawings which I'll show you in a second. So that's the overall ground floor. I will take you through the first floor later on in the presentation. So here's a closer view of the existing door to Trinity Street, and you'll note that behind that there would be a glazed door provided, and the doors would be amended so that they open outwards. This is a closer view of the meeting space. So there'd be a sort of a foldable screen that could be put across here to create the meeting, and then it would be folded back to create a more open area. And you'll see the toilets there. Then another view, so there's an accessible WC there, the air source heat pump plant here, steps leading up to the mezzanine floor, then the new fire exit in here. So then a closer view of where the kitchen would be, and then the bar going in this corner down here. And then this is a view of the proposed fire escape on the east elevation. So it's in this little door here. And that's a closer view of where it would go. We do want it more centralised, so we've got a condition relating to that. And that's a photograph of where it would go. And then this is an internal view of where that would go, just under this window here. And this is the photographs of the entrance door. And there's an example of a glazed door from another church, and that would have a similar one installed in this church. Here's a view looking inside the church as it stood in July 2024. So that's looking from the nave to the north chapel. And that's the 15th century font. And this is the Whaley monument. I think that's how you say it. I don't know whether it would be Wally or Whaley, but that's July 2024. So that is referenced in the committee report. And that's the William Gilbert monument, also referenced in the committee report. The monuments are going to be moved. So here is the first floor, and that would be the mezzanine in here with the stairs going up here. And then that's a closer view showing how it would be laid out. So the aim is to not have the mezzanine attached to the fabric of the church here. It would be a standalone mezzanine basically. Then you would have the glass screen of the mezzanine along here. So in effect a lightweight structure that would be reversible. And this is a side view section within the church showing where the mezzanine would go along here. The supports for the mezzanine here and here, and the glazed screen that could be folded back would be along here. And then this is the other angle showing where the mezzanine would be here. Then you've got the font repositioned here. It's not considered it was in its original place as of 2023, so it's not like you're moving it from its original home. And this is the feature glazing at the end of the mezzanine, which again is reversible. It's basically to reflect a stained glass window. And then this is the proposed roof plan showing potential siting of solar panels. Again, that would be conditioned. And also showing roof lights. And this is a side view of the church showing opportunity for the PV array, but again, we would need to precisely condition that. So this is the wall, the outer wall, where you'll note in the report it's proposed to put some wall art on there. And that would be where the wall art is. The precise detail of that has not been determined, but the aim is to have some form of mosaic wall art, probably in the form of a map. So these are similar sort of artistic details done in the form of mosaics. So that's what's proposed on the wall. That's an example of what could potentially go there, but obviously you would have Colchester, I would say, rather than obviously another town. Otherwise it'll be a bit irrelevant. And then you've got some railing art proposed, and there are small little artistic pieces put on some of the railings around the site, shown by these little red dots. And that's an example of the type of art. It would be small scale metal art sculptures attached to the railings. These are just example images. Again, they would be conditioned. And this is the triple wheelie bin housing that would be put on the site. So I'll just take you back to the overall site plan. So the wheelie bins are going to be located just here, if you can see my cursor. So you'll note that the scheme has been amended from the initial submission following consultation with our Conservation Officer and Historic England. And that included the removal of the first floor WCs and the solid partitions. and which will now be replaced with frameless glazing to create a discrete meeting place, which obviously reduces visual intrusion. There was also a reduction in the scale of the plinth access to the tower to minimise its impact. The altar would now be utilised to serve as the principal stage, and there would also, the chair store was relocated behind the WCs to reduce its clutter. The second opening to the kitchen vestry was omitted. So just to remind you, this is the revised plan after the original submission. And the Gilbert monument would be moved between the nave and the chancel. And there were also additional refinements to include details for the tower floor, the flooring setting, the bar area was changed and reduced, a reduction in elevation, and the mezzanine floor detail has been submitted, but again there will be a condition on that. So taking you to the planning considerations, in terms of the principle of the scheme, the site's in a sustainable location and there is a presumption in favour of sustainable development. The proposal would help community cohesion and also would help to restore a redundant church which is at risk as detailed in the committee report. It's part of the town deal and the city centre master plan, and there is thus support in principle, so the proposal needs to be judged on its merits, in particular the impact on the character and fabric of the listed building and also the character of the conservation area. So in terms of impact upon heritage assets, a listed building and conservation area are key issues, and the revised scheme is considered to respect the character and fabric of the listed building. Have been very detailed design changes. Historic England are now generally comfortable with the scheme. We have heard back from them following the consultation on the revisions, and they don't wish to add anything further to their comments they've made. They're happy with the conditions, but the conditions will need to be very detailed. Please note that the conditions in the listed building committee report are more detailed than the ones in the planning report, simply because they relate specifically to the listed building. The planning generally relates to more planning issues, including external appearance. So they're more detailed in the listed building committee report. So in terms of archaeology, there'll be an appropriate condition applied as detailed in the report. It's not considered there's going to be a detriment to neighbouring residential amenity from the use. It's unlikely there would be any significant change to any antisocial issues. That was covered under the graveyard permission application. However, I have, as a precaution, consulted the police, and their consultation expiry is next week. So once we've had that expiration, we can progress with the determination, all being well. We will obviously take on board any comments received from the police, but they did make very detailed comments on the graveyard proposal, so it was very stringently conditioned in that respect. In terms of highway issues, it's not considered there's a problem. The Highway Authority have not objected. It's a sustainable site with good access by foot, and it's also very close to public transport. A construction management plan will be conditioned to make sure we know where vehicles are going to park when they're doing the work. So in that respect, the scheme is acceptable on highway grounds. There would not be any significant impact upon trees and vegetation, and the arboricultural conditions would remain as per the previous graveyard opening up approval. There's also no objection to the wildlife impact, subject to the conditions as detailed in the report. So with this planning application, the recommendation will be authority to approve, subject to awaiting the expiration of the police consultation, and the conditions will be added as per the report. We don't need to wait for Historic England because they have now commented on the revised scheme. So that was the recommendation for the planning application. The recommendation recommendation for the listed building application can be approval, because we don't need to wait for the police on that one because it's not a listed building matter. So the application for the listed building is recommended for a straight approval with all the additional detailed conditions in that report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So I now invite John Burton to speak against the application. As before, you have 3 minutes when you press the red button, and a bell will sound after 2, giving you 1 more minute.
Thank you, sir. I'm John Burton, President of the Civic Society. My MBE is for services to the conservation of historic architecture. The Church of England and the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport have 4 members each sitting on the Statutory Advisory Committee on closed and closing churches. I am one representing the Church of England as a member of the Church Building Council, which comments nationally on listed church building alterations. A listed church no longer required for worship requires income to maintain the fabric, so we are pleased the Council has a tenant in mind. However, viability concerns us with the limited vehicle access to the church and the many established restaurant chains nearby. I'm very sorry, Chairman, I'm hearing news on the street that the tenant has now withdrawn their offer. Listed building legislation requires the maintenance of their character. This application so unnecessarily impacts on the character of the church that unless major modifications can be made to the proposal, we regretfully ask you to refuse the application. Public gain cannot be claimed as there are viable alternatives which on balance the applicant should heed. Placing blocks of toilets in the body of the church beneath an arch is so visually and socially disruptive. The existing eastern purpose-built toilet extension should be used to house the toilets. Fitted furniture, including kitchen units or mobile ones below the eye line, will not have the same intrusive appearance if sited in the body of the church. Imagine agreeing to place a toilet block in the Moot Hall itself. That is the equivalent of this application's proposal. Underfloor heating in a building like this and used daily is a good solution. Unfortunately, no practical source of heat can be found on the application. The impact of the character of the building and its setting can be compromised by green heating solutions, which we must all now use. Air source heat pumps, if that is the heating choice, needs to go somewhere, and they are noisy and normally sited externally to draw in the air. The interior art proposal is alien to the character of the church and grounds for refusal. External art is mentioned in the application. A similar proposal for the east wall of the extension was refused by this committee. We're not clear about the proposal for art in the railings in the conservation area. With sadness, we ask you to refuse the application as presented, hoping a viable income-producing scheme can be found from what is before you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I'll now, I've been informed that Councillor Chapello no longer wishes to speak, but because he had declared his conflict of interest before, he's not taking part in the meeting. And therefore, I will invite Chris Harding to comment on the points raised by John Burton.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, the scheme has obviously been through a lengthy process of changes to secure a potential use for this building. As we've said in the report, there will inevitably be some residual impact on the character of the building, but to be honest, I think it would be difficult to provide such a facility with a lower impact, to be fair. I think the kitchen obviously needs to be a reasonable size, and I think having it in the eastern element of the church is probably the best siting for it. If you move the toilets into there, then I think the kitchen would take up a considerable area within the body of the church itself, as you can see from the differing scales of the footprint. So I think it's probably the best case scenario of having the toilets sort of situated behind what would be potentially a screen when there's a meeting in place, or partly obscured by the screen if it's folded back. I think it's probably the best place for it, feasibly. Otherwise, I think you'd have the kitchen, a lengthy kitchen along there, which would eat into the open space of the church even more. So that would be my opinion. I think the underfloor comments are noted. We have got conditions relating to that, so that can be very carefully controlled. We will need to see the precise detail of that, and the same goes for the air source heat pump. We've got a condition on to say we need precise details of that. Yes, they can be noisy, so they will need to be mitigated appropriately. I think our conservation officer may want to comment about the comment about the alien art that's proposed. So I'll leave that to her in a second. In terms of the external art on the wall, as I said, that is potentially going to be a mosaic, and we will condition that as well. I think a mosaic with, for example, a plan of Colchester showing heritage assets would be a good idea, but we can carefully control that so we get an appropriate art in there. So I think that probably covers the point. I think the fact that there are other restaurants in the vicinity doesn't mean you can't have another facility like that within this building. I don't think you can say that you can't have a restaurant just because there are other restaurants nearby. I think that covers all I want to say. Irini may want to just add to that to expand on what I've said.
Yes, thank you, Chris. The only thing I want to add about the toilets is that currently the toilets are in the vestry, but they're not accessible because there's a change level, and so we had to find an accessible toilet which has to be inside the body of the church in order to be accessible. And so that was another constraint which informed that decision to move the toilet block inside the body of the church. The underfloor heating, there is a drawing that shows a system of new floor which incorporates underfloor heating as part of the application. It was in a package that was submitted originally. So, and of course, the remaining detail is the floor finish, which can be conditioned. The air source heat pumps are indeed a matter of concern, but again, we can negotiate a better siting or some screening, which can help mitigate their impact. And as for the external art and the mosaic, these are going to be part of an interpretation scheme. So they're going to complement the church and all that project. They're going to work together with the refurbished churchyard. So it's all going to be in synergy, working together. And the mosaic on the external vestry wall, there was a reference about a previously refused scheme in recent years. Again, this was a mural that had nothing to do with the church itself. It was more a commercial endeavor that had to do with Lion Walk, whereas here is part of the interpretation scheme. And of course, again, all the details and the content and can be conditioned and be a matter of further consideration. So it is the principle essentially here that is being discussed. So I hope that covers, again, complements what Chris had explained, but yeah, happy to take further questions.
Thank you. So I'll invite members of the committee to ask any questions, discuss and debate the proposal. Councillor Davison first, followed by Councillor Tate.
Thank you, Chairman. Chris, I understand you've had a difficult time. It's a very sensitive building. It's our oldest church. It's a Grade 1, and I'm horrified to see that we're putting skylights in, we're putting new doors in, we've got thinking about putting solar on the roof. The whole thing is totally against what one would expect from a Saxon building. More importantly, from a council's perspective, and I know it's not a planning matter, we have no user for it. Community 360 backed out, St Helena Hospice has backed out. Anybody wanting to use this building would want to fit it out the way they want to fit it out. And for us to make an attempt to make it a versatile building is short-sighted. It's premature, and I'm horrified. And the toilets, okay, relocate them by all means, but the plumbing's got to go outside into the churchyard, and that's all. You know, that's going to upset some of the gravestones, and the whole thing just makes me very uncomfortable. The street art mosaic, actually, even though we did refuse that previous one, is probably quite a good idea to have a local map, as long as it's done sensitively. But I just don't understand why we're ruining one of our historic buildings.
Councillor Tate.
Yeah, this is to me is the exact opposite of the sort of lovely delights of the previous one. Two main concerns. The first one being the artwork. I'm with Councillor Davison. This mosaic, looking at the varied heritage sites across the town, is a much more palatable thing than we were asked to approve last time and chose not to. But I think that needs very, very careful consideration. The thing that I understand fire regulations, I am, however, horrified, as a good word, at the prospect of just trashing the existing building to make a doorway. And I know that there are reasons for it, but it just sits so uncomfortably for me. You know, akin to knocking through Hever Castle and sticking a spire door on. I just no, it's not for me, I'm afraid.
Okay, any other speakers? Okay, Councillor Davison wishes to come back.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to ask a question. The mezzanine, is there a lift for disabled people? There is. I saw a square box, but I wasn't sure. But again, you know, is there a view outside at that level? Are the church windows, will they give a view for the cafe?
Would you mean an outview from the mezzanine or for the? Yes, I think they are, because I think we see the sections. Can we have a look at the sections? This one. Sorry. No, it's not. Sorry. Oh. It's not, we can say yes, but there is because the upper level of the windows, essentially, the mezzanine cuts through the windows, so the upper level of the windows are, so there's going to be an outlook from the mezzanine too.
Thank you. Right, so Chris, if you could answer Councillor Davison's comments and Councillor Tate's.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a reminder that this building is at risk. So we need to bear that in mind in terms of considering a viable use. But having said that, yes, carefully note your comments. We have a condition about precise detail of solar panels. Irini can comment on that in a minute. And the same with regard to the roof lights. Yes, the current user has unfortunately just pulled out, but nevertheless, the applicant is keen to get an approval so that it can be demonstrated that there is an potential end user status for this building. I think it's fair to say that what is proposed could be relatable to a number of other users. It's certainly utilising extra space with the mezzanine and the toilets and the kitchen in what is considered the best place possible. We've explained that you need a certain size for the toilets and also accessibility, and a certain size for the kitchen. The fire door is required for this sort of use, and I would say it will be required for any type of community use. It's got to be somewhere, and it's in the 19th century part of the building, so it's not in, you know, the really oldest fabric of the building, and that would be centralised as recommended in the report, so that it relates more conveniently to the window. Yes, pleased that the art externally for the wall is receiving a bit more of a promising comment. I don't agree that the proposal ruins the building, but we do take on board what you say, and I think Irini can make a comment about the roof lights. Okay, Irini?
Yes, thank you. I think it might be a misconception somewhere, because I don't believe there are roof lights. There are no roof lights in Serchich anywhere on the roof. I don't know where exactly was the thing.
Would it be
Because
possible?
are in the vestry, because are on the vestry, but not on the main roof. On the main roof, there are only the solar panels, and the solar panels are going to be in the internal valley, so they're not going to be visible from any public viewpoints. The roof is in a very good condition. It has been already being assessed by structural engineer to explore that possibility of installing solar panels. It's going to be very helpful towards the cost of running the church. So that's about that was about the solar panels, and the fire door again. It was informed from the fire escape strategy, because there's a requirement to have an accessible door, because the other doors now are not accessible, except there are changes of level in the church and the external ground, so it had to be found somewhere, otherwise building regulations would not be met. And as Chris explained already, this is the least harmful part of the church, because it's the 19th century North Chapel. With regards, so anything else about? I don't know, where's anything I should cover probably. So we covered the lift to the mezzanine. There is a lift outlook from the windows, and so probably that's everything I have noted, but yes, if there's anything.
Okay, thank you. Right, I see we have Councillor Harris who wishes to speak. Councillor Harris.
Just a couple of comments. I just wanted to test my knowledge on this, because I'm not normally on this committee, but I want to do the job properly. If I can just make sure I've got this understanding right. The building has been declared as Heritage England is at risk. That means it's vulnerable, and if we do nothing, that's an option. It could fall down. So that's the first question, that it will fall into disrepair, which worries me as part of our heritage for Colchester. So we've got money for it, bar the National Lottery, and the Heritage England, Historic England have got money for it. So for me, I'm trying to find a reason why not to support it, because for me, it seems to me that something's got to be done with it to maintain at least the status quo and make it not into disrepair. The comments of my colleague quite rightly made about the fire door, I just asked whether, because it didn't make it clear in the picture, you just showed a red blob where it would be on the side of the wall. Would that new door, a fire door, be in keeping? In other words, would it look like the heritage that the rest of the building has? Would it be out of keeping, or would it be declared or conditioned to make sure it would be in keeping with the rest of the building, to make it look like 19th, 18th century, etc., because that would be quite important to me. and bringing this into use, into public use, I think it's owned by the City Council, and for us to let it fall down would be unforgivable. So I'm looking to some sort of question, reassurance about where we are. I hear what the Civic Society said, and of course there is concerns out there, and they wouldn't want it to fall down either. But unless somebody comes up as a mysterious benefactor somewhere to maintain it as status quo with no use at all, I don't know what to say really. I'm hopeful that some of those questions could be answered. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Tate.
I'd just like to add that one plan isn't the only plan, and I personally don't like this plan. That's not to say that I wouldn't like any plan.
Thank you. Right, so we've got some more comments there. Chris, if you could address Councillor Harris's point and Councillor Tate's last point.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen again, if I may, just to show the fire door. So that was in the original presentation. So you'll see the red blob there, and then the drawing next to it showed the fire door. So we would have it adequately detailed, covered by condition. Please also note, as I've said, we want it shifted more centrally so that it would be in line, more in line and symmetrical with the window. So the red blob shows it sort of on the photograph, but then this drawing shows where it would be, but it would need to be appropriately detailed and conditioned. Yes, it does need some use, because otherwise it is basically going to deteriorate. So obviously you will bear that in mind, which you are bearing in mind. Yep, I can take note that you don't like this plan, Councillor Tate. There isn't another one at the moment, but can't really say much more than that, really, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Right, I don't see any further questions, or is Councillor Davison chomping at the bit to get back in? I take it you are.
Trying to be helpful, Chairman, in that, like Councillor Tate, it's a wonderful building and we do need a use for it. I'm just thinking the City Council, it's a central location, it's a high profile location. We've already repaired the outside. It's currently under scaffolding and everything else. That was a previous application. We've refurbished the churchyard, or we will be doing it. I'm wondering why on earth the Visitor Information Centre can't go there. And if it does go there, is the kitchen that they are putting in already up to 5-star standards? Can we use it to cater for people?
Okay, Chris, would you like to answer that?
Yes, just to clarify, I didn't quite catch what you said. You wondered what could go there?
Can you clarify, please?
The Visitor Information Centre. It's be in the centre of town. It'd be so much more easier to see and you get more footfall.
Just before you do, my understanding is that this application is not dependent on there being a user. It's dependent on the actual content of the actual application. So go ahead and answer, Chris.
Yes, I agree. It is a high-profile site. It's not dependent upon the user. And so I think Simon wants to make a comment on that, so I'll defer to him on that.
Simon, you have been deferred to. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the council did secure lottery funding for stage 1 for project development funding. We have yet to secure funding for stage 2, so the money is not yet in hand. The purpose of this application is to give reassurance to the lottery fund that there is a deliverable scheme on the church which will be supported by this council in terms of its planning functions, and to that end very detailed and lengthy negotiations have taken place with Historic England, and as you can see from Chris's report, they no longer have an objection subject to the conditions. So it is quite important that a permission is secured for these internal works, because otherwise I think you will not have a viable scheme to put before the lottery, and your grant application is in jeopardy as a result. So I would obviously advise you to think very carefully. The detailed form of this scheme is largely conditioned, as Chris has explained, and there are concerns which we share with the Civic Society around the detailed form of the WCs, etc. But they are matters which are controlled by condition. So I think you know, you have got cause to take comfort for those conditions, and to also be aware that your officers will ensure that the outcome is as sensitive as possible, working in partnership with Historic England. Various points were raised around the detailed form of the scheme, but at the end of the day, the church is not so capacious that it doesn't need intervention in terms of trying to create additional floor area within to facilitate the future reuse of the building. In terms of a tourist information centre, I'm not aware there's any grant for that, and I don't think it would wash its face financially. So unfortunately, we do have to find something which would be a long-term sustainable future for this heritage asset. So we would obviously, as the recommendations set out in the report, encourage members to think very carefully about the future of the building, and to support this scheme, if you like, as a means of securing grant aid to attract a future end user. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, members, we have before us what is effectively an application for us to discharge our care of a heritage asset that we as the council are responsible for, and we are being assured it is a sensitive adaptation that is being put forward. And for me, it is a pragmatic choice. I think that is in front of us, and it appears there is a deliverable scheme available to us, and we know what the alternative is, because the building is being registered as being at risk. So can I ask whether there is a proposal to accept the to approve subject to a police report on 7.3 and to give a straight approval on 7.4? Is there a proposal for that, please?
Chairman, can I just say it was very helpful of Mr. Cairns to give us the background. It's completely changed my opinion, in that we don't like what's been put inside, but I can understand the reason for it now. So I'm happy to recommend approval reluctantly.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Right, Councillor McLean. So there is a proposer and seconder for approval subject to the police report on 7.3 and a straight approval 7.4. All those in favour, please show. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? Could we have the result, please, Madeline? Thank you. So on a 5-4 majority, this application is approved, and that brings us to the end of our meeting. But Madeline wishes to say something.
Can I just clarify that it's the same vote for both of the, thank you very much.
Yes, I did previously explain what they were for 7.3, 7.5. So once again, thank you for attending the meeting this evening.